Section 5 of Neighbourhood, A Year's Life in and About an English Village, by Tickner Edwards. Read by Peter Yearsley. February, Part 2. 3. Living year after year in Windlecombe, I have come by old habit to associate with each month that passes its own characteristic changes and events. February always stands in my mind for three great ebullitions of the year's life, equally wonderful in their several ways: the coming of the elm blossom, the earliest clamorous music from the lambing pens, and the first rich song of the awakening bees. Through my study window, all this week of warm, glittering, showery weather, I have watched the elm trees above the churchyard gradually lose their sharp, clear-cut outline of winter and dissolve into the misty softness of spring. Already the tree-tops are so dense that the blue sky can barely penetrate them. This change is not caused by the expanding leaf buds, but by the opening of the myriad blossoms which come and go before the leaf. Their colour is a magnificent sombre purple, and the whole tree stands up in the sunshine, clad in this gorgeous raiment, from its bole to its highest twig, an imperial garment, reminding you in more ways than one of ancient Rome and its Caesars. For there is little doubt that the elm is no British tree, but was brought to us by the Romans all those centuries ago, with so many other good things. In the deep pockets of rich soil which have sifted down to the valleys, and in the shallower soil of our chalk hills, almost every species of forest tree makes generous growth, but perhaps nothing takes so kindly to Highland Essex conditions as the elm. The village gardens are fringed about with its beautiful wide-spreading shapes, and in summer griddled over with its long blue shadows, but no tree stands within a distance of its own height from any dwelling. Hard experience has taught men that the elm is undesirable as a near neighbour. Of all trees it is the most comely, because it is never symmetrical, but it owes this picturesque trait to a habit intolerable in a close acquaintance. Not only does the elm cast its great branches to earth at all times, and without creak or groan of warning, but during the season of the equinoctial gales you never know when the whole tree may not come toppling over in a moment, measuring its vast lengths on the ground with a sound like the impact of the heaviest wave that ever thundered against Beachy Head. It was so that the King of Windlecombe, the oldest and mightiest elm through half the county, came down one pitch-black, tempestuous night in a September of long ago. None of the children, nor many of the younger folk in the village, now remember the king, where he towered up beyond the east wall of the churchyard, and every sunset threw his vast shadow half-way up the coombe. But they are all familiar with the story of his downfall. A wild night it was. Every window shook in its frame. Every chimney was an organ-pipe for the winds blowing. The sound of the rain on roof and wall was like an incessant hail of musketry. Thatches were stripped off, the inn sign went clattering down the street, the gilt weathercock on the church tower took a list that it has kept to this day. No one dared go abroad that night, but families sat close at home, keeping shoulder to shoulder in timorous company, and dreadfully wondering what it was like at sea. Had you need to speak, you must shout your words, so great was the din of the hurricane. All night it raged undiminished, and no one slept. Some even would not venture to bed, not knowing but the roof might be plucked off at any moment as they lay, and let the drenching torrents in upon them. Then, as the first grey tinge of dawn blanched in the eastern sky, high above the voice of the storm came one tremendous booming note, as though the earth had split asunder. And with the light, people looked out and saw that the King of Windlecombe was down. To-day, as I settled myself to work, with the lattices tight closed, to shut out the lure of the songful morning, There came a patter of earth upon the glass. At first I thought it was one of the martins' nests broken away from the eaves above, being stuffed too full of hay by interloping sparrows. But the sharp volley sounded again, and looking out, there on the path below, I beheld the old vicar in wide-brimmed hat and tartan shawl. "How now, old mole?" cried he, shaking his stout oak cudgel at me. "The sun shines and the west wind calls, all the brooks are laughing over their beds, yet there you hide in your burrow, grouting among dead words, warming up stale, cold dreams, a 12-month-old. Shame on you! Come out and let the air and sunbeams riddle your dusty fur. Come and lend me your eyes for a long morning. I have seen to Mrs. Dawes' rheumatics, I've done the school, old Collop has had his bedside talk. I am free for a ramble, and I want to go everywhere, and hear tell of everything. Come this moment, or I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." With his jolly, wrinkled face turned upward, his long white beard wagging, and his kind eyes steadily meeting mine, it was difficult to believe that he could see only the faintest shadow of all before him, that for years past he had lived and worked in a world of deepest dusk, wherein the very noontide sun of summer was no more than a pale spot in never-ending gloom. I got my thick boots, and was soon trudging down the hill with him towards the riverside woods and meadows, every yard of which had been familiar to him in his days of light. Arran was running high, with 3 spring tides yet to come. Much rain had fallen of late. It looked as though the floods would soon be upon us, unless the wind changed and drier, colder weather set in. We skirted the river bank, with the wind whipping light ripples almost to our feet, and the sun making a broad path of gold along the waters. Beyond the river stretched level green pastures, intersected by deep dykes, and beyond these again lay the misty blue sierra of wooded hills. The old parson strode easily forward, his face turned up to the sky. His step never faltered, but his stick hovered incessantly about the path as he went. "Hark to the wind in the trees," he said. "That is a new voice. The elms must be in full bloom, and I can guess what they look like. And the sound is different in that clump of beeches there. The leaf buds must be getting long and green now. Only the ash and the oak keep their winter voice in February." Thus it always was on our walks together. What he heard he told me of, and what I saw I gave him as well as I was able. "Listen," he said presently. "Did you hear that? That is the first chaffinch song of the year. And there is the great tit clashing his silver cymbals together, and the bullfinches blowing over the tops of their latchkeys, and a green woodpecker laughing. He never laughs in that grim, scornful way until the year is well on the wing. Then I, not to be behind him, I see grass, fresh new growth pushing up everywhere. Young nettles, too, they are coming up green amongst the old dead stems. But they cannot sting yet. Yes, they can, and badly. Stop here a moment, Reverend. The celandines are out thick on the bank. You remember their shining, yellow, 5-rayed stars, set in dark green leaves, like the spade blades of Hamlet's diggers. Below, on the bank, where it is too steep for anything else to grow, there are coltsfoot flowers. The drab earth glows with them. No leaves at all, but just long, curved, scaly stems, each ending in a tuft of golden fleece. And then there is... I know. I can look back a dozen springs and see them all as well as you. But listen to that thrush. That is his honeymooning note, and the pair must be nesting not far away. I have found thrushes' nests in February many a time. See if you can find this one. Your singer has flown, and there goes the hen out of the other side of the bush. If the nest is anywhere, it'll be here under this tangle of clematis. Yes, 2 eggs already. I wish you could see their clear greenish blue, with the dapple marks on it. I guided his hand to the nest, and his fingers wandered lightly over it. "Cold," said he. "She will not begin to sit yet, perhaps never on this clutch. There is frost and snow ahead of us still, though all of us forget it this weather, bird, beast, and man." The path led us into the hazelwood, hazel below, and overhead soaring columns of beech, whose branches touched fingertips everywhere across the white-flecked blue of the sky. As we went along, the sound of our footsteps in the fallen leaves was like the sound of wading through water. I must read off to him what I saw about me, as though it were from a book. The hazel catkins were never so fine, I think, as they are this spring. The wood is full of them, like showers of gold-green rain falling. Whenever we brush against them, clouds of pollen drift off in the wind. It is the wind that makes the hazelnuts which we gather by and by. What millions upon millions of spores, only to make a few bushels of nuts. I struck a single bush with my stick just now, and for yards ahead the sunshine was misty with the floating green dust. Then, here and there on every branch, yes, I can see it all. There are little green buds, each with a torch of bright crimson at its tip, flaming in the sun. Why should they be so vividly coloured, if only to catch what the wind brings? Floating pollen as blind as I? No, the hazelnut was made for the bees originally, depend upon it. Nature never uses bright colour unless to attract winged life. We came out of the wood on the south side. Stopping just within the shade of the last trees, we had a view over a chain of sunny, sheltered meadows that lay between the riverside willows and the first steep escarpment of the downs. Here the wind was only a song above our heads, scarce a breath where we leaned upon the gate in the sunshine. I must be at my living book again, yet knew not where to begin, so crowded was the page. March is still 3 weeks off, and yet the hares are already as mad as can be. Over there under the hanger, a mile away, I can see them racing and tumbling about together. There are more celandines and coltsfoot blossom everywhere. I can see daisies wherever I look, and there is a disk of dandelion by the gate-post, just where you stand. What clouds of midges! Thousands are dancing in the air above our heads, and I can see their wings making a hazy streak of light all down the hedgerow, where the elders are in flourishing green leaf. Did you ever hear so many birds all singing at the same time? And there goes an army of rooks and jackdaws overhead. What a din! The high yelping treble of the daws and the deep-voiced rooks singing bass to it. The Reverend put a hand upon my arm to stop me. "I can hear something else," he said. "A dandelion, did you say? Then she will come straight for it." And as he spoke, I heard the old familiar sound too. It was a hive bee, tempted abroad by the glad spring sunlight. She came straight over the meadows, passing all other blossoms by. She settled on the single flower, half hidden in its whirl of ragged green leaves, close beside us, and forthwith began to smother herself in its yellow pollen. "And there she goes again," said the old vicar, as the soft, rich sound mingled once more with the myriad other notes about us. "High up into the air, doesn't she, making ever a wider and wider circle, until she gets her first flying mark, and then in the usual zigzag course home to the hive. A bee-line! People always make the word stand for something absolutely straight and direct, but a true bee-line is the easiest way between 2 points, not necessarily the shortest. To take a bee-line, if folk only knew it, is just to fly through the calmest or most favouring airs, judge the quickest way between all obstacles, dodge the ravenous tits and sparrows, and so get home safe and sound to the hive. Part 4. This spring the Artlets have built their lambing pens on the sunny slope of Windle Hill, in full view of the village. When, at threshing time last autumn, the waggons toiled up the steep hillside with their shuddering loads of yellow straw, and the ricks were fashioned end to end in a curving line against the north, strangers wondered why a farmer should carry his bedding-down material so far from its main centres of consumption, the stables and cowsheds. But the reason for the work is clear enough at last. Behind the solid rampart of straw, the lambing pens lie in cosy shelter, and every day now sees them more populous. Day and night, as the month wends on, there arises from them a fuller and fuller melody. Alone, perhaps, of all other rural occupations, shepherding remains unaffected by the avalanche of machinery and chemistry which has descended upon agriculture. Here and there may be found a flockmaster who talks of shearing machines, but it is rare to find anything but the old hand clippers in use by the old-fashioned wandering gangs of shearers. Flocks are larger, and so bring the modern shepherd more anxious care, but in all essential ways his year's round of work is the same as in that time of old, when the shepherds watch their flocks by night near Bethlehem. For the first time in near upon 50 years, old Artlet has had no hand in the pen-making. Rheumatism, the lifelong foe of the shepherd, has got him by the heels at last, and if it turn out with him, as with nearly all his kind, he will never again leave the chimney corner until he is carried thence and laid to sleep beside his long line of forebears up in the churchyard. But young George is as good a shepherd as any of his line, in this as in all other branches of the craft. Wherever you go among the neighbouring sheep farms, you will hear tell of the amazing good luck of Windlecombe at lambing time. George Artlet views the matter from a different standpoint. We sat together in his cosy hut on the hillside towards 12 o'clock of a gusty, moonlit night. The coke fire burned in the little stove with a steady brightness, casting its red rays through the open door and far out into the resounding night. Overhead a lantern swung gently to and fro, rocking our shadows on the walls. From the lambing pens hard by there rose a ceaseless yammering chorus, and from the outer folds a confusion of tongues deeper still, mingled with the tolling of innumerable bells. George Artlet sat on the straw mattress in the corner, his knees drawn up to his chin. "Ah, luck," said he, a little scornfully, peering at me through the cloud of tobacco smoke, all from my own pipe, which hovered between us. "And how be it, then, as them as believes in luck gets so unaccountable little on it? Gregory, over at Reedsdown yonder, there wants so much as throw a hurdle on a Friday, and wears a bag of charm stuff round his neck, and would walk a mile sooner and go under a ladder. Well, how be it wi' un? Lambs dyin' every day, folks say. And yos too. 7 on 'em gone already. 'Twill be 13, says. 13, the unlucky number, and then 'twill stop. 'Tis Reedsdown's luck, says he. You can do nowt agin it. And next year they'll go on feeding short and poor, just as they allers does, and putting the yos to the ram too young, and lambing i' the home yard again, where 'tis so soggy and unhealthy, just because 'tis near to his bed. When a man does his night shepherding, swearing at the lads through his windy, he may well look for bad luck." He rose and drew on his great blanket coat and pulled his sou'wester over his eyes. Then he took down the lantern from its hook, and together we plunged out into the buffeting wind to make the round of the folds for the 6th time since my advent, although the night was but half over. The moon was nearly at the full. In its flood of pure white light, the lambing yard with its surrounding folds looked like some extensive fortification, so high and impregnable seemed the walls that hemmed it in on every side. These walls were made of sheaves of straw, standing on end, shoulder to shoulder, of such girth and density that not a breath of the unruly wind could penetrate them. Within, the lambing yard was floored a foot deep with the same straw, and on all sides were the pens, little separate bays, flanked and topped by hurdles covered in with the like material. The whole place was crowded with ewes and lambs, the newest arrivals still in the pens with their mothers, the rest almost as snugly berthed out in the mainway of the yard. Outside this elaborate stockade were 2 great folds, the one containing the ewes still to be reckoned with, the other thronged with those whose troubles were happily over, and with whom already The cares and joys of motherhood were verging on the trite. Shepherd Artlet took no chances at any stage of his work. At the entrance to the lambing yard he carefully covered up the lantern with his coat, and thereafter allowed its light to fall only where he need direct his scrutiny. "None o' Gregory's luck for me," he said. "There bean't no wolves on the hill nowadays, but sheep they be just as much afeard o' summat as 'twere born in 'em to dread. 'Tis in their blood, I reckons. Now look ye, a naked light carried in hand and let sudden in upon 'em. See how it sets the shadows dancing and prancing all around. Like as not, 'tis so the wolves came leaping round the folds ages and ages back, and so it bides in the blood wi' all sheep, a sort o' nature's bygone memory. Froughten one yow, and ye be like to froughten all. Sets 'em stampeding, and that means slipped lambs, turned milk, and trouble without end. Gregory's luck again." On these rounds every pen in the yard was visited, and its denizens critically examined. Not a sheep of the huddled, vociferating crowd through which we threaded our difficult course but had her share in George Artlet's swift roving glance. Here and there we came upon a newborn lamb, and then George took its 4 legs in one handful and carried it head downwards through the throng to the nearest vacant pen, its frantic mother bleating her expostulation close in our rear. There were the feeding cages to fill with hay, and mangold to be carried in and scattered amongst the crouching sheep. Sometimes there was a sickly lamb or ewe to doctor, when we went trudging back to rifle the medicine chest in the hut, and rarely a weakling who refused its natural food must be taken under George's coat, a silent, shivering, woolly atom, and restored to life and voice by the warmth of our fire and the bottle. In how great a measure the luck of Windlecombe, or any sheep farm, depends on the foresight and tender care of the shepherd, was well brought home to me, as, in the first ghostly light of morning, something like a crisis came to vary the monotonous round of our task. I had dozed off as I sat in my corner, and woke to find grey dawn picking out the tops of the hills, and George away on his unending business. Presently, through the little window at my side, I saw him coming back over the rimy grass. His coat bulged out with the usual burden. He set the lamb down on the straw by the fire. Limp and lifeless it looked, and past all aid. But George fell patiently to work swabbing it. As he worked he talked. "'Tis White-eye agin. A fine yow, but a unaccountable bad mother, a be, surely. Purty nigh lost her lamb last season, and now again 'tis ne'er some matter wi' un. Won't gie suck, butts the little un away, do. That, and the cold 'tis. Terrible hard put to it I were last time to save un. And this, well, if comes round, 'twill be a miracle." He stopped to fetch his breath, then set to more vigorously than ever. "Losh, I do believe. Aye, I'll do it. Better than a score o' dead uns there be already. Now, sharp with the bottle." But the wretched mute morsel of woolliness was too weak to suck, and then George Artlet did what I had never seen done before. "Well, well," he said confidently, "we must try the old-fangled way wi' un." He took a gulp of the warm milk, and, bringing the lamb's mouth to his own, tenderly fed it. Again and again this was done, until life began to flicker up strong once more in the little creature's body. "But mind ye," said George, as presently he stood looking down on the resuscitated lamb, and regaling himself with its pitiful bleating, "no more a White-eye. Off to Findon Fair I goes with the draft sheep next May, sure as she's alive." End of section 5.
Please subscribe to update new videos. Please share and like if you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much.